does that work?
Do we have audio? Oh, here we go. We're back. Let's ride.
Is this me and him or just me?
I can now hear myself though, PD. Is that a? Oh wait, there we go. I got it.
Both? Thank you for
Both.
saying
Let's
both.
ride.
Okay, let me figure out how to get back to where we were. I'm just now scrolling through random stuff at Screenlabs. Okay, let's just jump that from the beginning then, since everybody lost a little bit. Okay, so
Oh, and I have the streamable now. This is fantastic.
so
All right.
we're gonna start out in a little bit of horns. They run a little bit of a brush. There's a DHO downhill, and Giddey doesn't recognize both responsibilities. His body is closed off, and as a result, he is entirely unaware of the ball responsibility, missing out on this opportunity for a dig, and as a result, shot goes up, shot goes down. A small thing for guys who have lesser handles is they need to get their butt to the sidelines. As pressure comes in, they need to make sure that they are not immediately pressed because they don't necessarily have the ability to avoid a ton of pressure. When you have that sort of circumstance, it is important for more pressable guards to always have their back to the baseline. Giddey is going to run this middle pick and roll, which Jack White, shout out Duke legend Jack White, I guess, uh, sends into the ether, and then it picks up a blocking foul on the other end. As you can see, they're running some drop pick and roll. Giddey is going to reject the screen and go middle. And as he pushes, he does not get a commitment from the help side defender, Jack White, who is able to guard two people at once, essentially, as we've seen this replay. That allows him to consistently, like by not manipulating the help defender, as we see Luka do here, as we're going to see a couple replays of, he manipulates the help defender to get him out of the way. Giddey failed to do this, and that's why his roller shot was punched, and Luka gets a layup here.
Yeah, that and also I just add the lack of any sort of change of pace once Giddey gets downhill, which we'll talk about more. Is I mean the both Jack White and the guy who pins it, or I mean the guy in the corner, both have the same. There's no question of whether the ball Giddey's going to give the ball up or not, and so there's just no decision to be made on that end.
So part of advantage perception is recognizing how far away defenders are. As you can see, this defender has a couple of different options for how far they could be between their help side responsibilities and their tag responsibilities. He's super far out, and this does not appear to be a particularly athletic center. So Giddey gets the ball out quickly. You can see the shot clock is winding down, and he gets it out so fast that they're able to get a triangle roll in time because of the quick acknowledgement that the help defender wasn't there.
Simple.
Oh, this is one that'll drive you mad. So they're gonna run. Is this Miami or Chicago? I hear we have a celebrity in the chat who can identify. Um, oh, it flipped all of a sudden. That's weird. I'm sure it'll just be a small error. My apologies for that. I think I might have copied two instead of one in the original. So what happens is that they run a Chicago set. The clip will roll is just the blanks. They run a Chicago set, which is down screen into a DHO, and Giddey does a good job of preventing the DHO. And then when he has to transition from immediate on the ball to off the ball responsibilities, he turns off. He turns his back to the rim. He turns his back to the ball, and as soon as he does that, he's what's he looking at? This the rim, people sideline. He doesn't see the bounce pass that's going to happen. His tag responsibility, even though he's sort of in a weird position, and because of that, there's a reasonable shot at the rim.
And this is just a very common theme with him, and just that there's always a focus on his singular responsibility, and just he does that the best he can to sort of make sure he's not yelled at, and then from there it kind of goes to shit.
So here we're gonna see him. This is the one earlier. He takes a bad route on this pick and roll. He has the help side defender is dead to rights if the ball doesn't weirdly pop out of his hands. He allows again 2 feet in the paint, which is the cardinal sin. And then here in this game, I think he's only credited with 1 assist, but you can see he gets 3 defenders down into the paint, giving a good look for the slot 3. It's kicked out for 1 more. Oh,
yeah, and that's kind of that. Oh, yeah. Let's go through this one. This one's great.
This one hurts. So we're just gonna run an Iverson action. Oh, there's a back end to this one. Okay. Oh, painful two set.
Right, gets the hold off,
Yep.
2 feet in the paint, kick.
Okay, so here's an Iverson set. They're just going to run him off the stagger, clear out the weak side. And Giddey just gets absolutely like blown up. He's trailing it really badly. So that way, when the pass is eventually thrown, he's so far behind that the defender can either take that 13-footer or drive all the way to the rim. And because of that clear out weak side, there's not backside help. So, in the pros or in the NBA, that's most likely going to be a dunk if you trail it. On the other end, we get to a prominent Giddey theme for me, which is which is early kickouts. Like he could take another step, he could force this defender to guard two people. Instead, he kicks out closer to the free throw line, and because of that, it limits the ability of the kick out to shoot. Like it has to be a really quick catch and shoot. If he gets a little bit deeper, forces a decision. He has these little areas of growth that are available, where there are more assists, there's more playing and making opportunities just by being a little more uncomfortable with what he does.
Yeah, and you can tell that he sees it too. I would attribute to just a lack of he's not confident in his finishing ability, right? So he knows he's going to kick, and so once the ball's picked up, the decision's made. There's no adaptability there. There's no change of pace, kind of like we talked about with the drop off that got pinned.
Yeah, the change of pace, the adaptability comes when teams go super conservative on pick and roll, like we just saw.
Right.
Yeah, this would be his tag. Far side weak side corner's responsibility is to tag. They clear him out. They run a slam to the front side, and he should be a little further in help if he is, as athletic as he can be. He doesn't go far enough. It results in a layup basically across his face.
Yep.
Yeah. So Giddey has one cross that he really loves, and against this coverage, he should just snake the pick and roll to the inside. There's a whole bunch of space. The team is playing drop. He just has to get to the level of the screen. He again leaves these big gaps between the screen itself and his defender. If he runs the defender into the screen, he can eat this soft coverage alive. He doesn't. The defender crawls into him. The handle gets a little loose. He gets picked, and you still get subbed out for this usually. If you lose the ball and block it on the other end, like unless you're Braun, it really doesn't work. It's funny because Giddey has really really quick hands, but he also has a bit of a struggle with his handle. He's able to get this the exact right time. Like most of his blocks are really really clean. He doesn't get them high, but he will certainly get them.
Yeah, and I think you can kind of see it on both ends. Just the complete kind of otherworldly court mapping and spatial perception is how he gets that. He had that poke steal earlier and then that pin. Even without defensive tools, he can still make up for it with that kind of skill.
I find this sort of interesting. Like he doesn't get non-covered as a shooter. It's one of the things like I assumed when I came into this dive that he was like going to be the same person I saw basketball without borders. Instead, he gets treated with real gravity on defense. Here's another half-hearted cross-face tag. This is his responsibility. They're just going to run some all move type sets. It's a pin down to a DHO, and then they're going to rescreen. But basically, it's a churn type set to isolate that weak side defender to make him have an uncomfortable tag. Giddey still hasn't established where he is as a help side defender on every single possession. So you'll see him, he's sort of in denial, then he's half open, and then he realizes what his responsibility is, but it's a half second late. And you can see he should have 1 foot in the paint right now, and the fact that he's not in this frame until, an almost swipe shows that he could be a better defender. It's just getting there every single possession.
Right.
How do you feel, Henry, about his movement skills, specifically as a creator?
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see here. I think, Peter, you probably know more about the specifics than I do, but it reads as just kind of a weak core. You can kind of look at pictures of him over the years. He's always been skinny. He clearly put on some weight. But like the lack of kind of both desire and maybe just ability to get low, and then also just once he gets downhill, he's kind of just going. It kind of reminds me of me, just having the high hips, and just like lack of core strength to kind of take hits and keep going. So once he's going, and there's no real ability yet unless he's in open space, to take contact and then adapt. It's all just kind of once he gets hit, the ball's getting picked up, and from there, it's is what it is. And so just adding that core strength, adding the leg strength, adding the hip strength will make it so that once that kind of the handle comes around, which it will, he's going to be able to kind of wear contact in a way he just can't at all right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So we're gonna get our first shooting rep of the day. Giddey's a 357, I believe, 3-point attempt guy. Here, there's a baseline drive. He's caught between two defenders. His defender is gonna help down, and the defender responsible for two people is not gonna sit. He gets the shot up. Here's a collection of a few shots that he had in the previous game. We can see some valgus collapse, which really does hurt his ability to generate power through his legs. Not all valgus collapse guys are bad shooters. Kevin Durant is famously one, but it does limit the ability to generate power through the lower body, and then for many segmenting through the upper body. He is an elbow out shooter. The release isn't super elbow out. He has to correct it, but you can see how the shooting bed, which is the way that the hand is placed as he's shooting, is diagonal. This creates some left-right misses. When you watch him shoot full speed, it looks a little bit better, but there are moments that you can see straightened out at the beginning where like there's just odd angles. This to me strikes me as low level fruit. You can get, okay, let's get his core tight, and let's get his hips tight, and let's tighten the elbow in a little bit. There are a lot of things in this jumper. Again, before it was out, now we suddenly have it straight. This is a good sign long term, but right now it creates these weird results where he has games where he's 6 for 8 from 3, and then he has games where he's 0 for 4. Also in Australia, They shoot foam. Compare that to somebody like Grayson Allen, who has like about as textbook of a jumper as you could want. That elbow is straight all the way through. It's never not pointing at the rim, and that non-extra motion, that simple motion, allows for an easier shot.
And you can also see that Grayson avoids the problem Giddey has with thumbing it, which is that same sort of, that's a result of and by thumbing it, I mean he gets his offhand thumb on the ball while he's releasing, which is a result of that diagonal shooting bed that you touched on.
Sometimes Giddey treats himself like he's a dunker spot threat. Instead of fading to the corner where he has an open three, he makes the job easier for the defender because he's not a vertical threat and just like sags into open space. I think that it's something that probably comes from being like a 6'8" youth player, but it's going to be a habit he has to unlearn at the next level. These rotations happen quite a bit where he will improvise or not communicate on a drive. Here we again have a late wraparound on the pick and roll, and they're just going to go around the horn. And you can see that Giddey is supposed to peel back to his to the big who popped, and there's not a communication there. It's very difficult for teenagers to be high level defenders just because of so many subsystems you have to learn and communication styles. But you can see everybody scrambles, and then there's 3 guys for 3 guys, but not a communication on who has what.
Right. Again, that's sort of just covering his own behind and not really worrying.
Here we have a counter. He goes behind the back. He does a great job of seeing that none of these defenders are at the midline. So we have 3 guard defenders. None of them are really looking. None of them are preventing himself from being in the middle. And as a result, he can just one cut. And like he's still a 6'8" dude. It doesn't necessarily come off on a possession by possession basis, but like he's a big guy who can stretch out and finish at the rim when the opportunity presents itself.
Big time. And that's just that same micro skill of just being able to read defender tells with their hands and their body and just react immediately with the ball in his hand is pretty impressive.
Yeah. Part of the limit of his handle is that he can't get to spots. I'm going to keep showing these snakes because they are available. Giddey's handle is very left to right. And when he is pushed to make a lot of decisions with his left, he can just float into these weird decelerations. I think it's a huge focus for him is to get a tighter and more complex handle, but also getting the movement skills required to pull that off.
Completely. So yeah, same problem here. Just no. Let's see, get it. Yeah. Just that same issue.
Yeah, it's the same issue. It's also that like he has moments where he just doesn't look particularly flexible. Again, this is just screen weaving. You have to depending on how the big guards, you either have to get skinny, you have to fight around both. And he'll have moments like he got through those screens well enough, and then he's kind of playing help side defense. Like he's playing help side defense that looks like help side defense, but it's not particularly effective. It's right. An interesting.
There's no zoning. There's none of that.
Yeah. However, when he does snake, when he does recognize that there is an empty corner, when he is capable of putting his foot in the ground, like here we can see there's no. I thought I had it queued up on the first one. Um, middle
Yeah, this one's a
screen.
weird one. There you go.
Middle screen. We got a big left to right. Beautiful, insane pass. So this is going to be his. This is his move. He attacks that top foot. As you can see, the big is told, no middle, no middle, no middle. He jabs with the left foot. He throws the ball out. It's a hang, and the second that the big flies towards the hang, snap cross, and he's able to really shift this big's foot, move him all the way out of the way, and get him to the right hand layup that he wanted the whole time.
Yeah, and that's that same skill. I mean, the move is the move, right? Like multiple guys have that in the bag, but it's the ability to just the second that the weight shift happens, throw the ball back. Gives him these huge windows that just shouldn't exist with his movement skills.
This is a possession I really like from him in help side. Of course, this is also a possession I included because it involves dropping a guy and a guy gets dunked on in the same possession. So, like, if you watch him in help side, he is seeing both. He is seeing multiple people. He's presenting a front. He's moving intelligently. Like, there is a sense of purpose with how he's in help side. And then, like, that's not particular. Neither of the actions are particularly his fault. And so this one, this is a crime of the handle. He doesn't hit the screen properly, and then he gets pushed into just a really difficult spot. I think there's 3 defenders on hand for him. Look, again, huge space. Then on his second dribble, there's 3 guys within arm's distance and help below. He has to either change direction, slow down, or something. He's just going to go in a straight line towards that baseline. And having a predictable handle at a higher level lets athletes and good scheme defenders to time up and create havoc. This is something that just has to improve in time.
Yep. And it's that same, I think it's movement based one. And then again, that loose handle means you just can't ever create that initial contact to get any sort of movement on the screen. And that just leads to the downhill kind of run out that we've talked about.
So here he has both responsibilities. This is his tag, and this is his corner. He recognizes the tag. He comes over. The difficulty is how far you go is also how far you have to come back. So his responsibility, should the ball return, he has to eat that space. And while he has some issues changing directions, as a help side defender, his biggest issue is going to be how much space do you feel comfortable giving him. If he's not a one defender, if he's not a wing defender, if he's not a big defender, you have to ask what exactly you're comfortable with him like doing on defense for his rookie year or for his rookie contract. Yeah. So here we have like some rub get stuff. This is we're gonna have 2 drops. The first one from the big on the handoff, and the second one from the big coming down for the pick and roll. And for all intents and purposes, this should be a layup. He's going downhill, and there's not a reason why he can't get either to snake it back or get all the way out. He pulls it out, and then he takes a good shot. Like, that's a shot he is capable of hitting, but it's not necessarily what you want for that coverage. He by allowing himself to be predictable with this decision making, he allows teams to thin the playbook out. An example of how like you should come off these actions is Zion. Obviously, they're in different classes as an athlete, but the idea is that like this breaks a coverage because teams suddenly have to send 3 or 4 guys towards that action, and now the secondary parts can hit.
Exactly.
I think this is your pressure in T-Mac that you love so much.
Oh, let's go. Yeah. So here, breaks it. That's like the first time I've seen him actually dip his shoulder at anybody. Then he kind of creates a space that he can obviously exploit with all that reactive panel stuff we talked about. Finally gets a guy on his back and is fine with it, which is shocking. Then he kind of pulls back, which is that same sort of tell, and he clears on the poor big. And then a Giddey T-Mac from the top of the key. Who knew?
It's like 7 steps. We'll get into what the T-Mac means. I mean, he looks uncomfortable being pressurized. He has a big for a T-Mac. You need to get that foot out. You need to drive towards the defender's top foot and push them back so you have room for the pull up. He stutters into it, and I think that if it were a big with like a plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 wingspan, that shot is going to be drastically impacted. But because it's a slower big who doesn't have the same height level. Here's Raekwon doing the same. T-Mac again. It's that leg extension all the way out, pushing forward. Miles Powell again. This is a super deep one. He really drives the leg out, push the defender backwards, and then can pull up out of it.
Yeah, and that's just more exacerbated by lack of drive he gets on kind of all those movements he makes. And so until he kind of adds that same sort of leg and core strength he talked about, it's not going to be pretty. And it's only kind of multiplied by the quick or the slow shot.
So this
Then
is
here
what
we get a little bit.
yeah, this is teenage stuff. They're running split cuts, and Giddey doesn't get to the screen. So with split cuts, both people get to a point where they make a decision: one pops, one cuts. But you have to get to the decision point to sell it. That way, you can add layers to the front, to the back. But he abandons it early without a real sell. Like he doesn't have a layup, but he doesn't get to the spot, and because of it, the play you can see everybody else is a little behind. It stutters down, and they're able to get across it in later. Here's another handle issue. He's able to drive and bail himself out. Again, the passing ability and the ability to recognize where there is advantage is crazy. But the trouble that he has getting to spots when his favorite cross isn't taken, as you can see, he's putting these two back end defenders in the jackpot. They have to choose who they're guarding. And when the corner guy helps down, it becomes an obvious read to the corner. If this guard had sprinted for his life, then the ball would have gone to the top of the key.
Yep. And he knows that too, right? Like that you can kind of see that slight look to the top. Just that kind of responsibility ordering that exists on defense, but doesn't really show up because there's no effort. But it's there.
This is the one that you flagged and said it has to be in this piece. So we get a little bit of a pick and roll. We have this little weak side pin down. This is just a movement based set where you're trying to get defenses scrambling. We're getting towards the end of the clock where we figure out what's happening. And Giddey sees this so late, like it's not even it's barely on the way. He just sticks a giant paw out there. His quickness and his ability to respond to what's happening is legitimately impressive. Again, we're back with the issue of running guys off screens. That should have been a handoff. It has to back out. Again, he can get results because he's talented. Like that's a solid result from his coverage. But DHOs have to involve contact. Guards have to feel pain every time that you run a DHO. They have to be worried about getting a Nikola Pekovic style shoulder. And if you don't do that, people are going to eat you alive in the league. How did you feel about this clip and it's the level that the rotation he gets from the defenders?
Yeah, I mean, he attacks the drop. There isn't even really, again, no screen setup because he can't dip his shoulder into guys. But that is the right breed, right? Like he's not going to make that skip. He might if there's no center there. But the fill behind is kind of an underused pass always, in my opinion. And so it's there, right? Like you get the stretch four, you get what you want. But again, there's that same sort of lack of pushing defenses into pressured sort of responsibility ordering because you can't create that rim pressure in the first place. So that was the only thing that was ever going to be there in that play.
Yeah, my issue on that largely is that like he makes the right read, but he doesn't get deep enough on the read. He doesn't
exactly.
There's very few times where he gets 2 feet in the paint and like keeps defenders in tension where they have two decisions at once. So here we have a fun little back to back. He gives it to a teammate for a layup, and then we see the hand speed come out again. He gets this pretty unreal deflection for a guy who does not have particularly long arms. This gets called back because of some WWE underneath. But this is the example of what Giddey wants out of his handle. He wants guys to come towards him. He wants to show hard left. He wants them to bite, and then he wants to all of his acceleration comes on that very first step, and he sells that. That's the core of his appeal as a ball handler.
Yeah, exactly.
As a passer, I don't know how many teenagers can make the level of precision that he has in his passes. So this is just going to be like a Bilbao style set where it's a down screen and the popper like sets a somewhat illegal screen to get the guy in the corner a look. And Giddey puts this ball in the perfect place. It is exactly where it needs to be to allow the lift to be able to make a decision. It's similar to how the GOAT throws this particular pass to where there is no way help can get it, and there's one person who could touch it, and that's Griner, and it leads to a layup. Like putting the ball where only like the exact frame it needs to be is extraordinarily difficult and is a touch skill I generally do believe in.
Yep. It's that same sort of example you were talking about, PD, where he just never there was never going to be any rim pressure there, right? Like it was, he picked up above the free throw line.
So Giddey, skinny, underweight, Definitely not physical developed, but he does really want to battle. Here he gets a good swim move to fight off the seal and get a deflection on the ball. Again, that hand strength and hand speed is one of his 5 like best traits. Um, this one was a mystery to me because there wasn't even an action. I think we'll get my official opinion right now. Um, this is a runway. Giddey is very good at understanding when there is a vertical contest to be made. And on this one, he just didn't. He knows that there is no midline help. Everybody is in a pretty conservative position for the level of ball handler they're facing. And it's just a runway. Dunk. I think a reverse angle again. We don't see him on this angle where he at some point should have been, and he's still flat-footed as the ball gets thrown down. Teenage stuff.
Yep. That's the 18-year-old Giddey we all love. And again, yeah.
I think this one's better because he forces the look that they particularly want, and he's cognizant of like he's not overhelping, he's not underhelping, he's just letting the ball handler pick a pocket. Yeah, he makes the shot, but he's ready for the closeout. He has a hand in here. It's not ideal, but it's much better. Here is an area where there's been a mixed bag, and that's the finishing. This is a previous game. You can see he initiates contact. He's pushing the left shoulder out for the bump, and then he's going to finish with the right. While still going on the way up rather than waiting for on the way down. That initiating contact, that organizing contact to make sure you still have a finishing angle is a big deal. It's also about last step. So here we watch Zach LaVine's last step, and he steps all the way over to get the contact he wants and is able to create the window for him to finish. So,
yeah,
I mean, LaVine is a different level of athlete in a lot of ways, but this last step, rather than first step, is a thing that Luka has really like put an important focus on, and it's something that with guys like Giddey, like we can see how small that and all small and intrusive that last step is for him, and that's what leads to 2 free throws rather than 1. Do you have any particular takeaways on the free throws?
I mean, the thumbing is an issue, right? Like that's gonna be an issue until he can actually generate enough power from his actual kinetic chain, not just his hands. Which is again reflected in the actual jumper because he kind of just gets to the height. It reminds me of like Blake Griffin's free throws early in his career. Or he gets to the height and then he throws it. There's no power generated from the bottom up.
Yeah, I don't mind thumbing for thumbing's sake. Like if you're a thumber, but it's the kinetic chain that's a problem. Here we have another early dribble kill. He picks this ball up with 4 people in the paint without changing pace, without forcing any rotations, and he throws a pass that doesn't like it's a safe pass. Like the next play happens, but there wasn't an intention from him. I think that's just a faith and handle thing. He does not like to really get pressured. He doesn't like it when he has to change paces. And you can kind of see why. Like when he shoots pull-up jumpers, there is an unfortunate kinetic chain thing with how he moves into the jumper. Like it's not the smooth energy here. Like we're gonna run, they're gonna run like a STS where there's a screener play, and there is an angle because the team is in drop, and he doesn't hit the gas going back to the middle. He said instead just like lightly like boats, just like it's not a motorcycle. It's a very like easy go as you go type of just like there's a pull up. Again, it's a shot that he's knocked down at a good clip this year. I mean his off the dribble numbers are much better than his catch and shoot numbers, partially because of his need for rhythm. But like you just don't see him bend in the way that like Bones does. You don't see the fact that like he can again. Bones is not a particular strongman either, but Bones uses his last steps. Bones is capable of getting flex and generating multi-directional power.
Exactly. And then that's kind of the quintessential bad Giddey play, on both sides, where he just kind of kills both possessions. And then again, here we have the
pressure. Like again, bad DHO. Just like make sure that somebody feels the pain. Then because they didn't feel the pain, they feel emboldened to climb up in. A foul gets called eventually, but there's just a mentality shift that needs to happen with how he handles the ball. And here's the special. When
this is the craziest pass.
Yeah. When he does get 2 feet downhill. So here he's reading these two. The one in white should theoretically be able to handle this play. but red is going to have the second read, which is the choice between the two shooters. He's able to get downhill. He IDs the coverage properly. He hits the gas properly. He draws in both defenders, and then he reads the weak side defender who's gapping between the two shooters in the corner and the slot, and the angle and the speed to which he throws this ball, like again, a game with one assist, and this is like his fourth gobsmacking pass, and we've edited out a whole bunch. It's important to note that like playmaking burden is better measured with like percentages and ideas around usage than necessarily like assist to turnover or like even just like casually looking at a game. It's like how often do hockey assists happen? How often is his turnover because he tried to make something happen? I find that like I thought this was one of my favorite Giddey passing games, and he has one. Like that's an outrageous pass to make, and it doesn't ultimately show up on anything on the stat sheet. Again, he's going to go left to right. Yep. Okay, so we have drop. We're going to have two guys slide through. He sees that the top of the key defender is just staring at him and has no weak side coverage. So he doesn't see man and ball. Oh, it's man, and man gets a wide open jumper. Depending on the team, some guys will want that throw to the corner, but there's so many consistently good left to right, downhill. Again, here's his read on the guy on the weak side. The difficulty level is obviously much higher in the pros, in the NBL than it was for him in youth league, where he doesn't just have to read the two top side defenders. He has to read that weak side defender, and he almost gets the manipulation right. He strings him out enough, but the difference is still the length of his strides and his ability to attack hip levels. If you watch him on drives, compared to like a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who when he's guarding bigger guys will put his hip just below their hip and make sure that they can't activate their strength differences. So when you see him
And
go
PD,
by,
are we attributing that to biomechanical stuff? Like to me, it reads as he's just too weak and he's too slow to do that right now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, he says that that he like really took the gym seriously this year.
Right.
So I think that it's just a progress thing. Like to me, this is the same as a guy who just picked up football or just picked up any other sport that has a particularly intensive weight room. So I don't take a ton from that. We got one of our beautiful triangle switches. No, he just double switches this.
It makes it through.
Yeah. I mean, so mobility expresses itself in a lot of ways. We often think about the ball handling aspect of it the most, but figuring out how he moves his trunk to chase through these screens is an important, like I would say, first indicator of movement skills before we get to like the handle stuff. So he is able to get skinny. He is able to recover in like even small moments. Like I think that the idea that he's going to be like a 0th percentile athlete in the league as it comes to like these defensive reflexive actions is probably not going to bear out. Mm-hmm. But I think there is a lot of low hanging fruit and also good signs. Here's 100%. Here's a sidestep. Again, there is a wide open middle that he like just doesn't take. You can see the big defender is coming up to show on him, which I didn't think was a thing that was going to happen for him in the NBL this year. But I guess he's getting hard shows. And instead of pushing this the other way, he walks it back to the middle where he's or he gets it lightly deflected. Then he walks it back from the middle into a big switch, and then does a sidestep. So his sidestep is still very rudimentary. If we compare it to like the god Jason Tatum, you can see that he waits until the ball is on the way down, so it looks like another dribble. So watch the timing here. The balls can come up, down, and out. Giddey just picks it up from a standstill, and that's what causes the smaller separation than somebody like Tatum is being able to play with the tempo of how the ball is actually being watched.
Yep.
20% defensive rebound rate. He still makes quite a few mistakes. So here he's going to be in help side. He does a really, really good job of getting out, preventing this triangle pass from the weak side to the big. And then he just doesn't quite stick his responsibilities. To me, this looks like, playing lower level competition where people aren't necessarily going to put it on your head. But like if you did this in, if you grew up in a system where if you didn't box out, people would bang on you, that wouldn't necessarily happen. He doesn't surge out the box out. And there's the tip out that international basketball is so fond of. Again, we see this elbow and the shooting bed. I don't mind it. I just think it's a little extra work that he has to do on every shot. The free throw percentage isn't as bad as it could be. Um, the follow through looks really good. The energy transfer looks good. It's just the extra element of having to torque your shoulder back in is something that I'd like to get him to eventually get past.
Which would speed up the release too.
Yeah. Do we ever help off strong side corner?
We do not help off strong side corner.
Okay, so is this strong side corner?
Yeah, I mean, this one's kind of brutal. This is kind of like the thing we were kind of talking about, where it's just all his responsibility, right? Like he's just going to make sure that he doesn't get yelled at.
But this is also targeting him. Like this is the exact play you would run. Like they run this weak side action where it's it's a backside screen, so there's no other help for him. The whole backside is cricked out, so it has to be strong side help. And no one should help off strong side corner. There are plays where strong side has to at least stunt. It has to offer something, and he doesn't quite like. One, there's not a communication level that allows him to have that moment. Another like great change of pace moment that he could have. That right there, like if he can get that rub from the DHO keep, that's a let for the second cutter because the defense has to adjust. He doesn't get it, and so we're here. Feet set early again. Valgus collapse. Feet are a little close, but I really love how confident he is in shooting. Mm-hmm. That is an unexpected surprise, and it comes out of his hands fairly quickly.
Yeah, you can tell he's also getting comfortable. Like it's partially mechanical, but it's also mental, right? Like there is something to be said for the switch he had over the year. What did he start like? I don't remember the starting numbers, but he's 22 for 2 for 20, and he's and 22 for 51 since, yes. Right? Yep. Like that is a compounding sort of return that you get once you actually start, without taking aside step 3.
No, and it's also a point that me and you have made a lot is that like being a professional basketball player is the best way to learn how to play basketball. Where it's like, he got forced into taking really tough shots, like in a good way, and so he had to work on them. Like exactly. Where it might have been in whimsy. This is brutal. Jump switch, and that leads to one of his players getting stuck on an island.
Again, just so unconcerned with anything but his own man.
Yeah, and that'll do it for us. The rest of it was a little hunky dory in terms of like it just gets weird at the end of games. We're gonna do I forgot to put your picture in the box on this one.
No problem.
So yeah,
we'll live.
Imagine if this question and answer box were Henry Ward. So we're gonna do about 10 minutes. Throw in your questions. It could be Giddey, could be 2021 draft, could be anything. We'll let a few accumulate. Let him get a little bit of water. Take a break if he needs to. And
thank you. Let me just throw in some lights. All right. Let's see.
So yeah, I see the most important question, which is how comfortable are you with saying Giddey's handle will improve? If you want to open this up in the app, it's a little hard for me to see like past. If you see anything that jumps out, Ward,
okay.
Just see it. I'll handle the first one, which was how comfortable are you saying that Giddey's handle will improve? I'm extremely comfortable. His handle is strikes me as like the first time that a big guard ever gets challenged. Basically, for his whole life, he's been able to stride past people who challenged him. And because of that, you don't really have to learn counters. Like I would say a fairly similar developmental process. And my issue was eventually there were guys who were 5'11" who could climb into my handle. And I had to learn how to get counters. And it seems like this year for him was one of learning that like the big mix cross doesn't work, and that like having to learn to play at different speeds, having to learn to play against physicality. I think that it bears well that he also has like a huge amount of a physical upside that's going to happen as he gets more years into a gym and doing movement skills. So I would say that like his handle is both primary equity and like fairly essential to get there. But I do feel good about it.
Yeah, that, and then I think the biggest thing too is that there's the underlying skill is already there of sort of kind of the understated, I guess, like back half of handling, which is half of it is having the tactile skill to control the ball, do what you want with it, and obviously manipulate your body to do so. But the other half is reading tells, um, creating displacements in the first place, the mental half, I guess you could call it. And that's like so clearly there, right? Like it's kind of amazing how good he is at it. Just in the ability to uh, both kind of half predict, half react to how defenders play him, how they're reacting to him, like we see that drop cross all the time, the jab cross you called it earlier. That only works when it's one thing to do it and knowing you're going to do it and just fire it off and hope it works for the best. But with him, and also we saw it too in the kind of those step up screens where he would pull it behind the back. Like he knows the second that guy's head turns that it's going behind the back. And that half of the handle is already so clearly there that once, you know, he's able to dip his shoulder, once he's able to kind of replicate that Bones clip of uh, actually, getting his hip lower than the defender and generating that force, he's going to really be able to move guys and actually create changes of directions that he just can't right now.
All right, you want to give like 3 or 4 quick hit ones because we got a little bit of a backlog.
Yeah, sure. So let's see.
Let's just do it. You start at the top and scroll down.
Yeah, so I've been my chat just scrolling. Let's see. Let's go. How do you physicality difference between a guy playing against pros and against college kids, especially with regards to a player for whom strength is a possible issue?
I have a pretty easy answer. It's much easier to put on weight in the pros because they can plan differently for you, especially if you're not necessarily the best player on the team. In college, you always have to win, and so that will always be the focus. All college weight rooms, I find, are often really good at putting on camera weight. They aren't necessarily always good at doing long term movement stuff.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think the other half of that too is uh, because that is the case, you're also playing against bigger guys too. So that's partially kind of in the evaluative process. I think, what that question might also be asking a little bit is how would he look in college strength wise? And I think he'd look better for that reason. And then here's another one I like actually. What is an ideal role for rookie Giddey? And which team do you think can provide it? I'm mostly focused on the first half of that question.
I think the best role is like similar to like rookie Shea. Like I just think that you have to feed him as many reps as possible. And I have to say that my favorite fit, I don't know if it's necessarily the best fit, but it's the one I'm find most enjoyable, is the Houston Rockets.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. And yeah, it's also kind of relates back to the thing we were talking about too, in terms of playing as a pro and kind of just developing that way, and a lot of trial and error, you can call it, which Houston would certainly provide. Let's see, there are also some good ones. Our pal Max had one that I just lost because I lost my scroll. It was something about having to do with Giddey's ability to attack left.
Yeah. I think that he has there's two problems. There's obviously the physicality. Teams just sit on the left. We can sit on the left because it will only go right as a counter bit. The physicality and the handle. I think that it can be schemed pretty easily to only get somebody to go one way. There's been success with RJ Barrett, success with lefties historically, and treating Giddey as a righty lefty early is probably the best way of doing it. Of just giving him plays where he's only on one side of the floor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think too that that's certainly a factor, and I do think kind of what I touched on too earlier relates here as well, in just the sense that the technical sort of physical skills of the handle are coming, but the mental stuff's all there. So once that comes, it's gonna look really good really fast if it does come in that sense, because he will be able to sort of maintain that, and it will be sort of a new process of pattern recognition, right? Like he's going to still have to kind of get used to learning what it looks like when he actually decides to go left. But the baseline is there. Should we take over some more kind of general?
Yeah.
There's some, there's a bunch. There's a question about Cam Thomas. Do you want to talk about Cam Thomas in this stream?
Yeah. I think Cam is a very interesting value proposition. I would want him to be a second unit offensive scorer. He does one thing fantastically well, and that's overwhelm underprepared defenses. I think that the best way to handle him is to have him be on that second unit, because then you don't have to necessarily adjust around his approach. Where if you put him as the secondary or a tertiary on a first unit, it doesn't necessarily work as well. How that works for the draft, it really depends on how teams view that value proposition. Playoff teams, I would have Cam Thomas much higher on my draft board than rebuilding teams. But that's because that his contract and also his skill set is more valuable in a playoff series than it would be for basically any regular season team trying to build long term chemistry.
Yeah, I think the points are fair. I'm generally dubious. You're much more kind, PD, in your willingness to sort of evaluate anyone and everybody. I personally just like the way I've kind of always said stuff. What I've always written about is like ball stopping is the absolute worst thing I would want on a team. And what does Cam Thomas do better than scoring? It's maybe ball stopping. I think it's also hard because, I do think that there is probably some value somewhere in the draft where taking him and plugging him into a second unit makes sense. I struggle with, I wouldn't want him around any young guys. And so that in of itself creates a barrier. And then also just the kind of acknowledgement that he's sort of just kind of a Band-Aid as opposed to an actual fix to some existing problem. It deters me a little bit as well.
So I saw a question about Ziaire Williams. Can I get that again in the chat about Ziaire Williams in touch? Because that's obviously a long-term favorite.
Ooh. Yeah, let's. I'd love to talk some Ziaire Williams.
Quickly, I do have a column that touches on JT Thor that will probably be coming out in the next couple of weeks. This and the Giddey piece obviously took up a bunch of time, but basically, every team should have a list of guys who are going to be first rounders next year, and should promise them to be late firsts or / early seconds in this draft. And it is one of the most underappreciated inefficiencies in drafting. JT Thor.
Gary Richmond.
Oh, I just don't understand how guys can be lottery picks in a year, but not worth second round contracts the year prior. It's insane. Does Ziaire have touch? Yes.
Yes, he does.
Yes, he very much does. So I think that Zaire's issues with touch are more about his inability to get clean shots than they are to have touch, what we would broadly consider to be touch indicators. That being said, the history of guys who are capable of even attempting the sort of stuff that he did at a college level, is really good. Again, just getting him to core stability, just getting him to physical stability, just getting him to leg stability, getting him through remember the presidential thing you had to do where you touched your toes and then had to prove that your arms went out. If we can just get him to pass that and add 10 pounds, he's going to be a good NBA player. It's just getting to that point. I think that Stanford's offense has a little more difficulties than people can appreciate, and it's also hard for somebody to come into.
You've said everything I need to say for Ziaire.
Thoughts on older guys like Duarte, Davion making shooting leaps, and how much to believe in the 1 year?
I think it's somewhat of a mirage, but not a complete mirage. I guess I should clarify. I've been having this conversation a lot around Davion. I don't have. Let's look up Duarte's splits. I'm not sure how he was free throw wise this year. Let's see, I'm pulling it up. He shot 81. Yeah, I would buy Duarte's more because of the free throw. Like I do think it's kind of faulty to be like one of those guys who's like, oh, the free throw percentage is there, the shooting is going to come. But that's kind of a buoy in the sense that when there's variance occurring, you can always kind of look back at the greater sample size, which has to, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but it does include free throw shooting. And Duarte's always been good at that. Issue with Davion is it's still bad. And while I'm encouraged by the growing volume every year, it's still a little bit concerning that we've looked at all 3 years he was in college and played, he was kind of bad, like not even average. It wasn't like he was average to good, like he was bad and he had a great year. And some of that I think I would attribute to kind of greater space creation. Got easier shots that way. But to go from shooting 29% your freshman year, 32 your sophomore year, and then 45 your junior year from three is a lot. And to maintain approximately 65% free throw percentage the entire time, I think expecting that to translate as it seems some are is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I generally go against 1 year improvements, mostly because they cause weird value spikes. Like people who again, I just think that this is a better case for like drafting guys earlier. Like Davion would have been like a fantastic pick last year, and like I would have picked Davion last year. And to make a decision to have a guy come back where he can have these like 1 year huge spikes allows for circumstances where like I talk about what was his name from what Marquise Chris had like 3 shots that rimmed in and out on his 3-point makes, and I remember watching that whole reel and being like, if 2 of those miss, like he's not going in the the top 20.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we can be caught up too much in the percentages. Finding actual improvements within those numbers are more important than the numbers themselves, especially without drastic spikes in any particular attempt of areas. Let's get a couple more. I think we got 10 more minutes. Are you good with 10 minutes?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Just trying to.
I feel bad. Zay, our boy Zay, has been pumping questions in the chat, and I actually like his most recent one.
Zay, what's the Dacian next question?
Well, he asked, there was some Dacian question earlier about, I can try and find. Here we go. Do you think Dacian's weight meaningfully impacted his game and there's fat upside, or do you think even if he were back to his high school weight, it would be more of the same?
No, I think that Dacian's larger issue is that the G League night offense wasn't particularly suited to him. Triangle precepts are generally built around wings and posting up with wings. And so I think that's sort of just the nature of the offense that he played in. The shooting is the larger concern than the weight to me, because Dacian has a particular intersection of skills that are best unlocked within shooting. And so like the weight looks a certain way, but I didn't really find it to be meaningful. He carried a lot of weight. He also carried a lot of chest weight to me it looks like a guy who bulked up to play professional basketball, and that there'll be another meaningful body change. Mm-hmm. Cannot wait to try to figure out Kuminga. Best of luck. Yeah, it's a tough one. Kuminga's tough. The G League guys in general were really fun. I'm glad that they picked this group. It was a cool group.
Very much so. I don't really have much to add on Knicks. I do think that it's kind of odd because Dacian wasn't a guy that I think needed to add all that much weight, and then he kind of came in with the dirty bulk, and now he looks like that. But I do think that he would be best served from, like you said, another sort of body recomp that is certainly coming. And then I saw, or go ahead, BD, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that like the fact that he put on so much like football weight, it's glory weight because it's all like trunk and chest. Like to me, that speaks particularly well. Thoughts on Terrance Jr.? I'm a known Terrance Jr. Head, big fan. I've always bought the jumper. Texas Tech is a really difficult evaluation circumstance, and now Texas. Not that Texas wasn't before, but it's now even more so. Um, I think that Terrance Shannon Jr. is probably a top 20 guy for me. I think that if he can get back to the shooting volume that he had in UIBL, it is certainly boding well. Aaron Henry thoughts?
I had an Aaron Henry a couple games queued up there this week. But he reads as a classic, one of those kind of like budget value play type guys, where if you're not getting a TSJ, if you're not getting a Kessler, getting one of those sort of, I mean, who's to say? I've become so inundated with my own thoughts and kind of the draft Twitter's thoughts. So I have no idea who's supposed to go where at this point.
Nobody
but I would
appears
take,
to.
yeah. So I was going off of my own sort of echo chamber. I would say that both TSJ and Kessler are top 20 guys pretty easily. And so if you're not going to get in there, Aaron Henry's kind of a perfect guy to take, mid 30s for that same type of impact and skill set, which is the shooting improvement wasn't great this year. Was hoping for better. But as I've said time and time again, and will continue to say, the more guys you can get on your team that create space offensively with either shooting or some combination of shooting, passing, and cutting, and just general feel, and limit space defensively with feel, athleticism, technique, the better off you are, and the more kind of geared you are to win. And so getting a chance on one of those guys who fulfills both of those things potentially in the beginning of the second round, just kind of being able to take a swing on it and hoping it sticks.
I don't know.
That is really attractive.
I don't know if I'm a big Aaron Henry guy. I don't know if I can go as far as on ball equity. It's really difficult to know because the Michigan State experience for him was very strange. Again, last year was so wing bereft. I really thought that he didn't gain that much by coming back to school. Obviously, the shooting stabilized a little bit later in the year from where it started in the year. Do I buy self creation equity from Matherin? Absolutely. Matherin is extremely good, and he needs to come out in this draft. He is probably the guy that I'm going to be doing one of these on next. Once he puts his name into the draft in some official sense. If Duarte is 21 years old, where does he go in this draft? In this draft or just in general? Like in his 21-year-old draft?
For the sake of the question, let's assume this draft. Yeah. So who is he hovering? It's crazy. He's 23 years old. 21 is 2 years younger, and it's not even young. Let's see. I don't have a list in front of me. I had him kind of 30-ish at 23. So I'll say late teens. Does that make sense? I feel that makes sense. I put him with the TSJ group.
That's probably a touch high for me. Best landing spot for Eve Pons that is the Charlotte Hornets.
That'd be sweet.
Where do you see the rookie roles for BJ and Josh Christopher? BJ just needs a year in a white room. Needs a weird way of just working on his body. Josh Christopher is going to just be a downhill bulldog. I really enjoy Rocco. I'm just going to do a whole bunch of these. I really enjoy Rocco. I think that Rocco is still a top 15 guy for me. Where is the point between what does a guy do? Or Seth, can you give that one again? I got halfway through it.
I lost that too.
I hope David Duke gets drafted. I wish for the best for him. Dawson Garcia should transfer to a school that will let him shoot more. And run him off a lot more actions. Jabari Walker, I have not seen enough of to have a definitive stuff. Rookie Reef's going to be kind of tough. What's the inflection point? 5. That is the point for me.
Maybe that question. So
thoughts on an inflection point in the draft?
Work,
So you switch from if it doesn't work, why not, to if it does work, why? That's 5 in this draft for me.
I think it's 4 for me. I think I'll settle on I like this one. What different physical and visual processes are involved in passing from different locations to different locations? Perimeter, 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 interior to interior. There was someone, I don't remember who, I wish I gave them credit, was talking about this on Twitter. It might have been in a group chat even, of like the value of. Oh, I think it was actually
It's Francis.
Francis.
Yes, Francis.
Yeah, been thrifty. Um, and I forgot to chime in, but I disagreed with what he was saying, and I think that the easier, the less tug of war there is between needing to pay attention to what is happening around the ball in your hands and what is happening around the court that you need to deliver the pass to, the easier the pass is. So that kind of sounds simple, but kind of what I mean by that is like I've always found that, or thought that, passing out of the post is way easier than passing out of a drive, because there's just less ordering that has to happen. Like when you're driving, and you kind of see with Giddey a lot, so it's kind of pretty relevant. But with Giddey, is he gets those downhill kind of, the train gets going, and there's the focus for him needs to be, what the hell am I doing next? Am I changing direction? Am I stopping? Am I going to the rim? Am I kicking? And just because he can't really easily make those decisions yet, it's always not predetermined, but he better hope there's a pass available, and he's going to be looking for it. And so for that kind of reason, I would say that kind of the more, I guess time is the word, more time, more kind of bandwidth you have to make a pass, the easier it is. So I think that passing out of the interior to the perimeter is probably easiest. And then I would go from perimeter to perimeter, and then I would say perimeter to, or interior to perimeter, and then interior to interior, because then it just gets super clogged.
All right, let's finish out with 3 questions. If you have anything, or if somebody has some, just knock them out.
Yeah, let's see. I want to give. Francis is at been thrifty, so I want to make sure he gets his due. He's a great guy and a great follow.
I have a large article about the JT Thor thing that should be along in a couple weeks. I just kind of want to see if some people declare. What does Giddey's development look like if he goes to a team that can't give him reps? Thanks, Francis. Probably pretty sideways. Like, I think Turbo Saturansky was a way of seeing him. Like Saturansky with the inhibitor chip undone. It's probably just like a really frustrated version of that. That I say that's a team that doesn't invest. Did you see any of those? They all popped up and ran away from me really quickly.
Well, I love Zay's. Is there a correlation between passing touch and shooting improvement? I think it depends on what shooting improvement needs to happen, but I would say generally yes. I think Giddey and Sharif are the examples in this class that make sense to me. Like there is a certain underlying level of proprioception and spatial reasoning that occurs in the same process of that is both passing and shooting. That if you have those skills, there are mechanical fixes that need to be made that are so clear, I think, with both Giddey and Sharif, that once those are addressed, you kind of get like this Pareto sort of compounding return on what the shooting looks like.
Yeah, I think that there's not necessarily a link between passing and shooting, but I think there is a link between live dribble passing and shooting, because they are very complicated systems that have to be that have to involve a lot of self order.
Yeah, agreed.
I just think that passing is such a large, like we think of it as
Yeah,
pretty like simple C pass, but it's much less monolithic than that and different. Like to answer a question, like pretty poorly, different things affect different things differently. And so like depending on the type of shooter you are, there's probably a type of pass that best corresponds to the mental processing required. All right, let's see if we can get out on a good one. You got a theory one that we can get out of here on?
Let's see. I'm of course now I'm just scrolling through the. I mean, this one's. I like this one, which you kind of just touched on a little bit and can open up on. What skills, parentheses, spatial awareness, passing, court processing, shooting, contact drawing, parentheses closed, do you feel are the most important when evaluating prospects? So I think what they're getting at there is like what kind of not untraditional basketball skills do you look for in certain prospects? I think it's kind of open-ended. I would just say basically that it matters. Those things matter more as the roles become more ball dominant, but there's going to be a ton of caveats everywhere. I would say that Well, I liked what you included spatial awareness and core processing. Those I think are the for me, two of the biggest ones that sort of are like I would just call them indicators in terms of if those skills are strong, even if the technical skill hasn't caught up, the technical skills are easier to add later, and therefore uh, you will then. I would bank on those more than the inverse.
Um, yeah. I mean, what skills are important is sort of like the thesis of what I've been doing.
Right.
For people who are maybe didn't follow me last cycle or are newer to the work or the space. Um, let's actually finish that on Francis' question.
I
Um,
love that. Yeah.
um, I think that the skills vary based on archetypes. So like live dribble passing isn't particularly important for post players and finding what you believe about skills and how they determine or how you believe that skills develop and move is really important for everyone's draft evaluation. Like that, my purpose here isn't to try to have definitive answers. It's to lead everyone to better questions of their own process, so that they can come back and do work that maybe is a little more inflected or maybe asking a slightly different question. Can you read that out to me, the Francis question, and then we'll get out of here?
Yeah. For the Deem connector role, it's rare for such a player in that role to be as aggressive going downhill as Giddey. Do you think that affect? Do you think that affect will affect how well he would actually fit into that role because of the mindset? I.e., will he turn down extra passes more than preferred because his first instinct would be to look for a drive?
You want to handle this one first because I have a segment that I may or may not have wrote today that is fairly on brand.
Yes. So I remember DMing you when we were kind of starting this process of taking notes on these games and stuff. And this was kind of the biggest thing that stood out to me with Giddey, and I think what will make him such a valuable player for someone who sees the same thing, a team that sees the same thing, which is Giddey is incredibly good at. You called it advantage perception. I think when we were texting, I called it scoring perception. He's extremely good at seeing multiple steps ahead on the chessboard and making sort of quote unquote mundane plays that lead to points that are not like Giddey adds a ton of value in creating um, advantages without even being, without being the guy that makes the pass to the play finisher or without being the guy that makes the pass to the guy that makes the pass to the play finisher. The special there is he kind of knows that has that rotational awareness, which is why I think we're so bullish on the defense. He can understand sort of what needs to happen in order for the end process he has in his mind to be achieved. Um, so I don't think that mindset, quote unquote, that you talk about, Francis. I don't think that the mindset. I think the mindset's perfect. Like his mindset is perfect for being in that scalable role. Because I don't think he would ever turn down an extra pass to drive. If he thought the extra pass would lead to a bucket when the drive was kind of probing and trying to create something, the pass would always be the first choice.
Um, that's really cool. Uh, shout out to to Giddey's coach. So this is how I finished the Giddey breakdown today. But before I want to read this, I want to say thank you to everybody who bore with me. So I'm going to do these every time I do a breakdown. With a revolving door of guests. I would really like to try to do it to highlight different people in the draft community and people who work around in basketball. So I think every 2 or 3 weeks we'll have one of these. I want to say thank you to Henry W. Ward of Pro Insight and the 5 Point Play for joining us. He was fantastic. He dealt with all of my annoying DMs and by extremely hyperventilating as the rendering process took longer than I could have imagined. So thank you, Ward. Thank you guys for sticking with me. Thank you for joining me on this first weird journey that I promise the next one will be smoother. I promise that the timing will work better. I promise that it'll be out on time. All the promises. Make sure that you follow Henry at Henry W. Ward. Make sure that you read his columns. Make sure that you DM 4 or 5 people and tell them to follow Henry Ward. In all caps, preferably. Um, you know, I just wanted to say thank you. If I would like this to be a venue for writers to get paid and to have it sort of be an open mic night of sorts. If you would like to help make that happen, I do have a Patreon that I'm going to start devoting a little funds to getting this fully operational. That can be found in my Twitter bio, which is @AboveTheBreak3. If you can't swing the money, it's totally fine. I appreciate it. The everything is always free except for the monthly links, and have started to unlock the older ones. So I just wanted to finish out with the ending of the Giddey piece, and I just wanted to say thank you guys. My interest.
Before you get there, PD, I just want to also thank you for taking me on, because this was an awesome process. Not a you're very good at hiding the stress that may have come. I was responding by sending you a bunch of fun Julio Jones gifts. But this was an amazing process, a very cool way to kind of break this down. I think we hopefully kind of achieved what we talked about when we talked the first time for a few weeks, and sort of making this more accessible, which I think is a very noble and very important goal to have. And sort of the work we do is, it's one thing to kind of share takes and bounce it around, but getting to the root of kind of, I think the first thing you sort of said to me was like, let's make it so people who weren't raised in basketball like us can watch it like us. And I think that's incredibly important. Also something I'm very happy to have a hand in, and very thankful to have a hand in. So thank you. And also just, of course, thanks for everyone to tune in, because this was super fun. I'm kind of blown away by the support so far. So thank you.
Well, let's finish this out. My interest in Giddey is that he is a rare prospect with multiple independent developmental pathways to value: physical development, off the dribble shooting, and handle. If any of these aspects were to grow, Giddey becomes a different sort of prospect, and with corresponding lineup considerations. Josh E.V. Giddey, many people are saying. There's a chance that all the aspects could grow, that even to medium amounts, and then Giddey's top 5 value play is made clear. That's the main difference between Giddey and like Hallie or Zoe, that they were always going to be something similar to what they ended up, that the connector idea was a fit concept for teams. Giddey could become a pull-up shooter. Giddey could become an athlete. Giddey could become a primary with a real handle. And that's not a connector in any real bet. The relative odds that circumstances are favorable to your own beliefs on how skills develop. Regardless of your read, Giddey's rookie use seems universal. Use the jet sweep ideas to get Giddey downhill, force down rotations from defenses, and create for Giddey with scheme until the handle gets more functional, and then scale usage depending on lineups. There are some outcomes for an Ant-Man Saunders type usage, where Giddey is putting up gaudier but empty numbers not aligned to development or winning. And to be honest, one of the underrated pressures in the league is the amount of anxiety coaches have about getting weird. I used to wonder why all the good Freed Arco ideas about an all 6'7" NBA didn't ever happen. And I always thought it was just because there was too much big man talent. But it was the different talent class. Coaches with the insight who really don't care. Like, you can't tell Nelly anything about anything. And Nelly ball happened. And then Nelly won enough that other people needed to ape his style. Zion, Jokic, and the cadre of creative, positionless weirdos in this league will cause a broad emboldening of basketball wides. Giddey may be the next wave. And so, to the next wave of weirdo basketball minds, thank you. Have a good night, everybody.